My name's Rowan. I live in a little village in central Scotland. I used to live in Glasgow, but I missed sort of green space and being close to friends and family and things, so I now live a little bit further away. And I knew I wanted to come to the GSA when I came to visit the department, and I guess I just had that sense of being able to combine the sort of theoretical and conceptual thought that I was becoming interested in with solid things, with objects, with things that I could make with my hands, and combining those two things. The ideas behind my degree show collection, I guess, came from being a bit sort of introspective, thinking about what was important to me in my life, and that is, you know, love is comfort, is feeling free from worry and safe, I suppose, and family are sort of the important things in my life. But I guess a realisation that I'm certainly not the first person in the world to have had those thoughts and to want those things, and looking at objects as sort of physical manifestations of these things throughout history that other people have made, you know, incising into rock and carvings, runes, standing stones, big things, but also, you know, wedding rings, objects people are buried with, the things that were precious or thought to be precious to them, personal objects, you know, things that people find now and have no idea what they were for, but they were obviously precious to someone. So that's where my research started, and the symbols and forms, these sort of archetypal images that connect in lots of different places in lots of different ways in these objects. So hands, fingerprints, carvings of people, of faces, of repeated circles, spirals, stars, crosses, all of these things. I think in my work I've tried to consider a sort of X shape being one of them. It can have so many connotations. It can be a Christian cross or a pagan cross. It can be a kiss and a sign of affection, a signature, a symbol that can be sort of reinterpreted by different people in different ways, taking it out of maybe an understandable context and putting it into an object that I think is contemporary, but also could just as easily, I think, have looked like it's been dug out of the ground, you know, maybe a timeless thing to it. One of the most sort of recurring important processes in my work was using 3D printing in a low resolution 3D print, so going through trying to sort of maybe subvert this technology in a very simple way rather than doing a high resolution print. Low resolution, which means the layers are very visible, tying that into things I had researched, the comfort of textile, of clothing, of memories within these things, and the layers as part of that, so these textural aspects being an important part of the work. Also using an electric engraver, so a sort of old rickety kind of engraver pen almost, that allows me to basically draw into the pieces rather than copying or transferring a pattern from somewhere else, a very direct imprint, incision into the work, sort of, I guess, referencing in some way these sort of carvings and things I've researched, these big stones and things in a smaller way, each mark being unique and different, and that being an important part of it. Repetition, I guess, was an important part, not necessarily a process, but a part of it. These shapes being repeated and the power of their kind of connotations being part of that. So I'm going on to do my Masters at the University of Glasgow. It's an M.Lit, it's technical art history, making and meaning being the kind of focus. At my time at GSA, I have loved the theoretical side of thinking about objects, thinking about things, thinking about art theory as much as I've enjoyed the making things. And I hope that this course will be a really nice in-between, a really nice consideration of why things are made, this sort of anthropological study of people and of objects, but also a material culture study of why things are made, why people hold things close, what the materials behind them are, but also a more technical side to that, so being able to age objects, being able to look at their materials and work out where they came from, or what sort of social, economic, political factors influenced their being used or not used or being popular. So that's definitely something I'm really looking forward to. I think it's going to combine both. I definitely plan on continuing to make. I have a workshop space that I use, and a lot of the processes I've used in my work this year are quite low tech, are things that can be made simply, that can be made from printed elements, and things that I hope I'll be able to continue doing out with the GSA studio space. And being able to keep learning about things, about maybe why in the last year or so I've realised these things are the things I'm interested in, and maybe a little bit more about myself and a little bit more about the wider themes around these things.
My name's Hegney, and I'm from Hillsborough, which is a small town outside Glasgow. And the reason, quite a few reasons that I chose to study in Glasgow, but first would be quite a few of my family members and things like that have been here before. It's got such a great reputation, and also because I was lucky enough to participate in a 9 months intensive course here, portfolio preparation, and I just fell in love with it. The ethos of the school, there's something that just resonates with me, and that's continued throughout the 4 years that I've been here. Ultimately, it's about material value, is the simplest way to put it. It's been underpinned by research of the colour blue, and it's come very prevalent that it's such a rich and contradicting history, and it's given me such a wealth of things to work with. Primarily, it's made me look at juxtapositions, hierarchies, opposites, things that maybe don't quite sit together, and I'm really interested in joining these two together. It's been about rhythms. These sort of things have come through in the work. It's materials, how they're working together, how I can change maybe what they communicate, and the tensions and relationships that they share are of great interest to me. I would say that the way to broadly cover all of the things that I've looked at so far, really at the core is drawing. I've always been interested in the way that drawing becomes a method of analysing the world around you, materials, any other kind of thing that becomes of interest. And through the techniques and skills that I've gathered over the years being at GSA, I've become more comfortable when I've thought about these techniques and processes as a form of drawing, potentially in the 3 dimensions, or how to lift flat surfaces into a multi-dimensional space. So to comment on a few of the processes that I've used, things like etching and surface pattern, things like that have, for me, lifted metals in particular out of flat sheet, but then also other processes like mould making and things like that for other materials, and uniting them together has helped me link back to the theme. I would also say that chasing was a really pivotal point when I became familiar with that. It was, to me, the drawing in metal. So making the tools for chasing, which of course are unique to you, it's almost like your own pencil mark on paper. So the chasing tool to me became the pencil to the metal. And that has continued throughout my processes so far, and I've been looking to find other materials that can and processes that can replicate that in a different way. So all of that, I think, has been at the core of my processes. But then I would also say that I'm an avid collector, and I think we all are as jewellers perhaps, but in doing so, the materials have actually driven what processes are relevant for each piece. So I've collected a variety of materials and tried to find a constant within them, which is more to do with the lines and the shape, and then the forms and the materials are becoming the variable within that. And also due to the fact that a lot of these techniques that we're learning within the department are so traditional and ancient, it has always been of interest to me. I've found that I've been inclined to want to subvert them in some way, which again I think links back to the theme of opposites and trying to find things that maybe just about sit together but speak of something different. So it's been of interest to me to use techniques like chasing, and also the fact that the stones were very prevalent, the lapis lazuli, within the work, but not to use them in a traditional sense. So rather than setting the stone, I've been more interested in smashing it apart and grinding it in to the surfaces of things to use it as a completely different medium in a way that you wouldn't expect. I see two strands to what I visualise in my future, and one is to keep going. I feel like I've only just started all of this research and working and getting to know what I'm interested in and where I could position myself within the discipline. I really hope that I can keep going and find my place in that world. I hope that I would also be able to continue the research into a further level, whether that's through another programme or something like that. And then secondary, I would also be interested in pursuing the idea of the ancient craft, which has completely fascinated me throughout being on the course. I'm very passionate about keeping that alive, and I want it to be able to exist in the world in a place where it can be rejuvenated and new and contemporary, and I don't know if there's an outlet to be able to share that some way with the community. So I see that as two parallel things that I'd like to pursue.
I'm Debbie King, I'm from Oxford, and I chose to study here because I kind of fell in love with the city, and at interview it just felt like the right place, and coming to see the school as well, it felt the best place to be, and it was really like a nice interview. It was really easy to talk to tutors, and it kind of just had like lots more opportunities than other places I've been to, and it just felt like the right place to be. I was looking at the difference between things like with jewellery and how in everyday life it was sort of fidgeted with, and I thought it'd be quite an interesting relationship to look at, and so I went and sort of observed what people did, and it was those sort of playing with, it was often in conversation, not really thinking about it, and I thought it'd be quite interesting to sort of create pieces that are specifically designed to be interacted with. And then I also looked into like why we fidget and things like that, and so it sort of led me to look at like stress and what people do, at coping mechanisms and things like that. And so the idea is I created a questionnaire and asked lots of people where they felt stress, what colours they found most calming, what movements and things that they did. And so all the colours in the pieces are sort of designed to be the ones that are most calming. So it often came out as blues and yellows and whites, so I used like the silver as white. And so then also the visual from it, so especially these, they come from like the areas of the body that people found where they most felt stress, and I sort of used anatomical drawings and things to develop designs and patterns for them. And so these pieces, and so I wanted to sort of look at the sound of things, like sound, sight and touch is quite a nice thing. And also I thought using metal would be best because they also asked if people found what temperature they found most calming, and weirdly, and it was cold, like the thing we most time. So I use metal because it conducts heat, so when you put it on it's that cold sort of crisp impact, but then it warms up and it develops sort of relationship with the body. So just really examining how we interact with things and how it can sort of be like second nature, so the body helping itself in a way. I went to the surgical hall in Edinburgh and the Huntarian here, and I looked at all the kind of specimens and things. So it's quite, well, whenever I sort of talk about it, people find it quite gory, this sort of them using the body and things as anatomy, like anatomy is the thing. But I want to sort of develop from that because all the patterns and the textures, they had such a different look than that they were. And so I thought it would be quite interesting to develop something that's quite appealing in a way, because like here's the body and everyone has it. So it's kind of interesting to see how I could develop that and change how it looks. The main thing I've done is like lots of piercing, and I found because I did consider sort of laser cut and things like that, but I find when you hand pierce, it has that each one is different, and it sort of develops and changes its shapes and things. And I found that quite nice because it means that even though, because I would cut them in sets, so there'd be like 3 in one go, some of them are similar, they all still came out slightly different. My plan to kind of afterwards is I'd love to go work in sort of companies and in the industry, and so I think initially I would like to do like internships and just sort of work out what's there and see what works best for me, because I feel like there's so many options like freelance or working with this, and I think the best way I can decide is just to try them out and to sort of see what happens, really. I feel it's quite up in the air, but yeah, I just want to sort of see what I can find, really.
My name is Hannah Wood. I'm from a place called Froome in Somerset, and I chose to come to Glasgow because of the good reputation that I'd heard of the jewellery course of Glasgow School of Art. At the beginning of my project, I began thinking about seeds. I grew up in the countryside, so I've always, and my family has been interested in gardening, wildlife, plant life. So I've always been quite aware of that, and I've always found it interesting the way that there's sort of like an unyielding energy of nature that sort of is unstoppable and it always comes back. So that's why I began thinking about seeds, and also I'm extremely interested in like historical and historical jewellery and like jewellery from other cultures, and that began with seeds, shells and stones being used to adorn the body. So that connection within what I'm doing to the historical roots of jewellery was something I felt really interested in. I really liked casting because I felt like there was something really interesting about making permanent something that was transient, in like that what I felt like historical jewellery that maybe was made of seeds would have degraded over time, but in metal it is more, has a longer lifespan. Yeah, I really enjoy working with wire because I find it is a really useful malleable medium to make many different types of repeated structures, and that is something I'm interested in because it has this sense of like movement, and with that comes energy. And so I've been making lots of chain, but the particular chain I'm interested in making is sort of I would say it's a figure of 8 chain with 2 edges, so it's sort of like a box in a sense, and this is really voluminous, and I've been sort of playing with scale and size in order to create a really strong sense of movement and energy transformation through my pieces. I want to move to Bristol and hopefully get my own workshop, maybe shared with like a few people, and sort of bounce off there and be able to create what I want to make and have like outside influences to that.
My name's Iona Hall and I'm from Elgin in the Highlands, and I chose to study in Glasgow because I moved here to do a jewellery course at college and I wanted to further my education to a degree. So in the summer I went on a trip to the Isle of Iona, Skye and Mull, and I also live near the coast, and I was constantly attracted to the natural lines and textures on the beach, and I was constantly picking up objects that I found and liked that I could hold them in my hand and keep it forever. I was attracted to all the different objects on the beach. I was picking up pebbles where I was attracted to the different colours, or a shell which I liked the shape, and I was taking lots of images of the imperfections in the rocks or patterns in the sand. And I wanted to make a box collection for my degree show which held the sense of discovery, where you can pick up an item on the beach and hold it in your hand. So every single one of my boxes you can hold in your hand, and it has a different element to the beach. I have lots of different samples, trying to capture different elements, experimenting in different ways in which I can show every different object has a different attraction to it. I have used a variety of different processes, including stone setting and enamelling to capture the nice colours from the pebbles, or a rock pool. I caught my eye with the water shimmering in the sea. I was attracted to all the different rock pools, how the water shimmered in the sun, and by using engraving and chasing tools I was able to use this element and put that into silver. And I was also attracted to seaweed and how it's attached to a rock but it moves in the sea, so there's some movement, and by using puck welding I was able to add movement to my pieces. So every single box has a different element to it and holds a different sense. So every single box, when you open it, there's a surprise on the inside to keep that sense of discovery, and the base can be held on its own and the lid can be on its own, or it's an object together. But each one, when you open it up, you have a new surprise. So I'm moving to Reading for a year to go to Bishop's Land to further my technical ability, and I'd like to push myself into making boxes. I'd like to focus more on making hinged boxes, and would also like to make my boxes, and would also like to make jewellery which links to the boxes.
My name's Rosie and I'm from Ayr, and I chose to study in Glasgow because I like the busy city life in contrast to the seaside town of Ayr. I think I really liked the workshop. It's bright and airy, and it's just a comfortable place when I came to see it to work. My degree show is inspired from the west coast of Scotland, the harbours, particularly looking at the buoys and the ropes that are used. So I've used roll printing as a technique to get patterns and lines. The shapes are kind of like vessels for like the shapes kind of the vessels you see on the harbour. I wanted to keep them light and paper-like, not to be too rigid. I just liked through my model making the process of keeping it loose and sketchy like my drawings. So that is mainly been the use of the rolling mill to create the patterns. I've also used inlay on my piece, so that was pouring the jesmonite in to keep the kind of aesthetic of nature, like along the harbour. Colour and composition is really important in my pieces as well, so I've been working a lot with groups of work, having them tie in the different depths and heights of pieces. I enjoyed the way that you can pour jesmonite in to form shapes. I've used perspex and things, but I felt that was quite a solid material, so I liked the versatility of the jesmonite. So yeah, I think it's very important to keep the graphic element of my sketchbook in it, keeping my work loose and light and not getting too heavy. Even though I'm using the jesmonite, I feel like with the loose connections of my vessels, it doesn't make it too weighty. Yeah, it's very important that pieces sit together in little families, brings them, pulls them together. I'd like to continue making, maybe get a workshop space and develop on. I've enjoyed making the vessels, so I'd like to maybe try go into jewellery a bit more, see how it, or maybe up in scale would be interesting to do as well. So just keep making.
So I'm Katie Watson, I'm from a wee seaside town in North Berwick, and I came to Glasgow because it had a good art scene, and when I came for the interview I just got a really good vibe of the place, so yeah. So it all started on going on walks around my hometown, and there's so many amazing places around there, both beach and woodland. I love discovering new places, hidden away paths and stuff, and then I always collect things as I go on walks, whether it's like a fragment of a shell, or some pine cones, sea pods, anything. So I've got a massive collection right now, and take a lot of photographs as well, zooming in on different textures and patterns I found, which I then translate into the metal. Well, before I looked at the close-ups of textures and stuff, I did look at the silhouettes of various plants and stuff, and that's what led me into casting at first. And I was going to do jewellery, but I felt like the chasing worked a lot better, and just to focus on the silversmithing side of it. I basically start off with the photograph, and I either go over various lines on the computer, just using the paint tool, or go over it physically, or get a sheet of tracing paper and trace on the lines and patterns, and from that just directly translate that into the metal, I guess. And there's so much you can do with tracing as well. the lines like this, or like pushing parts out, and so many tools you can use, and you can make them just to adjust to what you're doing as well. I fell in love with tracing as soon as I first used it at the start of the year, and I feel like it lends to their organic quality to my research and my work, and also working on the large scale vessels. It allows me to explore the different textures, and I feel like tracing can really bring out a piece and make it come to life, and bring from something which is flat, making it three-dimensional, and have more of a form. So this one, I don't know if you can really tell, but it's the back of the pine cone, and I started off just drawing loads of different designs for it, and then you have to fill it with pitch basically, and trace all the lines which you want to do, take all the pitch out and turn it over and push all these shapes out. And I did it with like a dolman punch, so it would have all the textures to it as well. So I think it's quite effective having it all over as well. Yeah, I started off making the bowls and vessels, and then looked into doing cups, and I wanted to keep the form quite simple and just focus on the chasing really, rather than to create like a different form and chase into it all together. So just quite simple bowl shapes and then chase into it, just to make it more effective, I think. Well, I'm looking into doing residencies either in Scotland or hopefully maybe abroad. But the end goal ideally is to set up my own studio and have my own business. But I think I'll definitely carry on chasing in the future, so yeah.
I'm Aileen Gray and I'm from Dollar. I chose study in Glasgow firstly because I do love the city, but I did study at college for 2 years prior to this, so it seemed sort of a natural progression to like apply to the art school. Well, for my advanced hire at school, I did jewellery as my main piece, and I then applied on to, really enjoyed that. I then applied to college and then on to uni, and I just loved it. I was initially inspired by sort of the repetition and structural forms in the urban environment and sort of the exterior of homes and houses, sort of contrasting with elements like the warmth and comfort of home, and also the light was the main inspiration as well. It comes from inside the buildings. Main inspiration was the warmth and light, so I took a lot of pictures at night time as well, looking at the light that was coming from windows and the doors of buildings, and also even like the fire in my home, and looking more kind of personal things, but also the aesthetic of the light coming from inside. I have experimented a lot with etching. I really enjoyed that process, but a main aim for me, I think this year, was to sort of improve technically, and I kind of think I've done that through my soldering and using the laser welder, learning how to do that to make my kind of complex structural forms. I cut out my squares and I solder all these individually together. I think there must be about 200 individual squares on this. And I've bent it round a mandrel and I've laser welded them all on, because obviously if I soldered that it wouldn't work, but yeah, so I've lasered that on and oxidised it. I've used like obviously metal, and I've used a mixture of orange lacquer on this and spray paint to get the colour. I'm also in some other of my pieces looking at material to incorporate as well, and obviously the orange has been inspired from the light and fire at home. I think the necklaces, I feel that that's quite good, because if I'm talking about kind of comfort and having something round, so I've made a lot of necklaces and brooches. I feel like it's quite effective with my structural forms, more so than maybe other things. I'm hoping to apply for some residencies, but the end goal would be to kind of have my own makeshift studio, but we'll see how that goes.
My name's Sophie. I'm from Glasgow originally. I live 10 minutes away from here. And I was in technical college for 3 years doing jewellery and learning traditional techniques, primarily stone setting, bench skills, CAD, 3D modelling, things like that. And I really wanted to apply to the art school so that I could explore a more creative side of my practice. My degree show collection is primarily based on photographs that I have taken of Glasgow. It's focusing on an aesthetic that I'm naturally drawn to, and just kind of trying to show a side of Glasgow that's unique to me. And I've focused on creating quite bright work because I want to sort of show the vibrancy of the city. My photographs are mainly of the architecture, also exploring like sort of grittiness of Glasgow, but that's also primarily why I wanted to use bright colours to portray that, you know, perhaps has a bad rep at times, but if you really embrace it, it's so vibrant and colourful and beautiful and a great city to live in. Jesmonite is my main component that I'm using. I entered 4th year knowing that I wanted to use an alternative material to metal because I've been using that for so long now, and I just really wanted to explore something that was versatile and able to kind of capture the textures and also introduce the colour and everything that I was trying to incorporate in my designs. Yeah, my process is focusing a lot on creating colour and mixing colour. So I experiment with that first of all in paint and then apply it to Jesmonite, which I'm really happy with the results for because I wasn't sure if that would work to the extent that it has, and the material really allows me to create combinations of colour that maybe weren't even, you know, possible in paint necessarily. And yeah, it's a material that if you were put it in a mould or any texture, it completely adapts to that and mirrors it, which really is, you know, able to reflect my photography quite well on the like industrial level of Glasgow and the textures that you see every day. I'm making individual pieces that are kind of building in a composition to create a small sculpture that I'm then applying to jewellery, whether it be a pin or a necklace. The other good thing about the material is that you can go quite big but keep it light, so yeah, it's just very versatile. I would love to focus on my own practice for a while. I feel like I've been in education for years now. I just want to be able to maybe create some sort of career for myself in this industry and focus on that. I'd also love to apply for residencies, particularly abroad, because I have been in Glasgow for so long now. And yeah, community-based work as well is something I'm quite interested in. So there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about applying myself to.
I'm Xingwen, and you can call me Ada. I come from China, and the reason why I come here is I think culture is quite nice. Yeah. My degree show collection is inspired by the changing city because I live in China and it's a developing country. Now it's like they destroy lots of building and rebuild it. So I want to use my work to show that. Yeah, and so I use like some steel and magnet to try to let my work movable. Yeah. I just like took some photo and then like try to transfer that into my actual work, and also I want to like put some old image onto the top of my work and then shows like something already loose. The shape, like the crosses come from a mark that they say
before they destroy a building, they always leave a red mark, and it's a cross, so that's it's come from. So I've tried the laser welding, and I try to laser weld the steel and silver together, so that like the magnet can go through the steel rather than go through the whole pieces. And also I try to like explore how to transfer the image onto my work. For transfer the image onto the metal, I just like using water transfer paper, and then like just print it out and let it dry and peel it onto my work, and then it's just like. And for the laser welding, I just like laser weld the steel and silver together, and then put some enameling to make sure it's strong enough. The magnet is like, I think the most important part in my work, because like it can connect two pieces together. So, and I think that's related to my brief, like it's like changing city, but something lost, but we still got something. We still got the connection with past. So that I think the magnet can do that. After I graduate, I probably will earn some money and try to set up my own studio. And if I feel like really interested in jewelry and also like that can afford my life, then I probably will apply master again.
My name is Paulina Knapik. I'm coming from Katowice, Poland. I chose to study at Glasgow School of Art because of its high position in rankings amongst the design universities. And also I came here to visit during the application process, and I really like the facilities and the friendly environment. My main inspiration was the series of painting by Alphonse Mucha, a Czech painter creating in Art Nouveau style. The series of painting I'm talking about is Precious Stones. It consists of 4 paintings. It's topaz, emerald, amethyst and ruby. What drew my attention to his paintings was the delicacy, femininity and decorativeness, and I aim to show it in my jewellery as well. I also focus on the harmony of the opposites, nature and geometry, and also on the Japan influence on Art Nouveau. That brought me to origami, which I developed more in my collection. One of the main techniques that I used was casting. I used it to cast paper origami, and also I experimented to cast with stones already, not to having to set them afterwards. Another technique is quite an old one, which is filigree. Filigree brought me back to Art Nouveau aesthetics because of its curves and fluent shapes. Another way I chose to translate the origami into metal was to fold it directly in silver, and I used very fine layer of fine silver to do it. I was talking about the harmony between geometric and natural, and I'm trying to achieve it as well in my pieces. So for example, in this brooch, I'm combining the casting of flower with the frame on the back and the filigree, which is made in gold, and it aims to repeat like the natural forms and aesthetics of Art Nouveau. Eventually, I think I would like to set up my own business, but at first I still feel that I need to learn a bit about the business side. So I would be open for some internship or even working for somebody else just to get to know what's going on behind.
I'm Lyndsay Fairley. I chose to study in Glasgow because the city seemed like a really interesting place to live, and also the course looked exciting because you can experiment with materials but also experiment with metal as well, and I'm originally from Surrey. I initially started by going on walks on lots of Scottish beaches, and what I was really interested in was the arrangements of things that were washed up on the beach, and the random compositions that were formed with that. So I took lots of pictures, and then I also made lots of drawings from those to really experiment with mark making and different tones. And then ended up focusing more on different tones of black and grey to experiment with texture more than vibrant colours. So what I wanted to take from that was similarly spontaneous compositions, and that's what I wanted to show in my work. I didn't want to just make jewellery that was inspired by things that I saw on the beach. I wanted to abstract it further from that, which is why I wanted to do more of these spontaneous drawings with mark making. And then I picked out elements of my drawings that I liked the most and I found the most interesting and developed those further into pieces. A lot of my processes have involved making tubes in different ways, because it's a good way to build volume out of something that's otherwise quite flat. And it's also allowed me to bring in some of my mark making, so I've done some inlays into the tube with different wires, so I can do different oxides and patinas on that. And also using my drawings to create etched patterns that I've enamelled. And they've also allowed me, by using mesh, to create different textures by underfiring it, and I can build that up a lot more than I would be able to with any flat sheets. Also using laser welding to join pieces together, because that doesn't involve any heat and won't damage the enamel, which is important. And also allows me to build lots of light structures with steel, which has been coloured in an interesting way. Because the mesh enamelled tube is quite a delicate structure, I've introduced the steel wire running through the centre, and I've been able to laser weld that onto bigger, stronger tubular structures that allow them to become light, wearable pieces. I'm looking into different residencies to apply to, including GSA, but there are also quite a few abroad, so I'm looking into seeing some of them. Otherwise, my ideal endpoint would be to set up a studio with fellow makers and be able to keep producing what I'm making now and develop it further into more pieces.
So I'm Sandra Zinkute, and I came from Lithuania, from a small town in there, and I came here because of study opportunities, because of the city and how vibrant it is compared to where I was culturally. So I just wanted to experience something very, very different and new, and I like the idea of art school because of the background that I came from, which was very academical, technical and traditional in drawing, painting and sculpture. So I started what I know the best, which is painting and sculpture. That's why I wanted to make my designs and my objects very, very tactile, three-dimensional, very playful, I would say. And I started with Victorian jewellery, which was very sentimental and romantic. And I thought that it was a nice idea to start, because jewellery is something that you wear on your body and it's very, very close to you in general. And so the next thing that I am very fascinated by is a very, very new topic. So it is space travel, and I like this sentiment and as well that romantic sense of discovering new worlds and where you could possibly go, and the idea that we want to be not alone in this universe. So I think that this is a very nice idea and a nice way of humans trying to find somebody else to kind of feel not so lonely in here. So that's one of the main ideas of my work. So it took me quite a while actually to figure out how to make the plastic in the way that I wanted it to be. In the end, what I found actually was that plastic is much harder to work with than I expected it to be. It takes hours upon hours of work and preparation for it, really. and the whole pressing down the form actually is very short. It's just a few minutes long, but the very preparation for it and then cleaning up afterwards is extremely long taking process. And then yeah, of course, like spray painting is just one of the favorite processes that I could ever imagine. I would say like it's very artistic in a sense, like it's very intuitive. You can't take notes for it or something like that. It's very intuitive. You just have to see how it goes. I don't know, it depends on your mood, on everything like that as well. So yeah, no spray painting is ever the same. So it's also the idea that I really like, that everything looks quite different. I have a tube roughly this size, and I heat them all up evenly and then press it down and keep it for it to cool down. And it's quite a nice way of actually pressing it down, because it has a very nice perspective and kind of relief once you're doing it, like, so you can actually control it, whether you want to have it a bit taller or whether you want to have it, like, you know, more pressed down, on how many of those waves do you want. So you can control it quite a lot to some extent, but of course like not 100% fully, so there is some kind of intuitive feeling into it. Yeah, and then I cut them all together, so these are all kind of cross sections, and I really like the back of every single piece because it's like all white, nice cross sections sort of way. So yeah, and then loads of earrings. Yeah, all the earrings are also very mix and match, really, very different from one another. So I have bright colors, I have dark colors, and like the shapes are also all very different. Like even the ones that I'm wearing right now, they're also something. Well, for now, I think for some part during the summer I'll be coming back home, and because I have an apprenticeship there with one of the jewelers, which is also working in very interesting, non-traditional jewellery ways. So I'm looking forward to learn some new skills from him, and after that I'm not yet sure, because like it depends whether I'll get some more opportunities during new designers or degree show. It depends on the connections that I make and all of that, and I'll see what's in there.
I'm Ailsa Morrant, and I'm from up the moor, and I chose to study silversmithing and jewellery at GSA because for me it's got the right mix of things I'm interested in: art, anthropology, making, and generally considering why people wear jewellery in the first place. This year I've been investigating our instinctive moments of everyday contact, because I'm fascinated by how these actually create our society. Despite the fact that most of our contact is actually passing in moments that we're not even aware of. So my first challenge was to research something that let me make tangible and visible moments of contact, instinctive contact. So the first thing I looked at was handshakes, because people subconsciously connect and do a whole lot of things when they're shaking hands that they're not aware of. And what I did was I cast the unique forms that are inside your palms when you have palm-to-palm contact, and I used lots of different materials for this. And what was interesting was they looked like little internal organs that I hadn't appreciated before. So that was where the name for this body of work came from, which is Organs of Society. And I also researched how we use jewellery to capture moments, and how we use jewellery to celebrate those. And what I hadn't realised before that was that most of the jewellery that we treasure is actually retrospective. It's about things that have happened in the past. It's actually quite rare to have a piece of jewellery that talks about what's happening at this particular moment, or what's talking about moments to come. So I felt as my job as a designer is to make stuff that is actually to help make people happier and fulfil their lives and be better all round, that perhaps I should set myself the challenge of making some form of jewellery that made us think about the moment we were in, or the moments that we could anticipate or that were coming. So that's what I set about challenging myself to do. So what I have done is make quite a varied body of work using different materials. Sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's been video, and I have made some wearables. And one of the things I've done is make a series of small medals, which are called Sensing Every Moment, a celebration of the ordinary. So it's things about everyday moments that we just pass by. So I've got a medal for the lost moment and a medal for the moment to come. So that's one thing I've done. And another thing I've done is make kits, which are pieces of jewellery that you put together yourself and they carry around with you something that you want to celebrate or prepare you to be able to celebrate something. And a balloon has featured quite heavily because I like them transient materiality and the in the momentness of a balloon. It's there 1 minute and it can be gone in the next. It's just like a moment. I've used lots of materials, but one of the processes that I probably used the most is casting, because I felt casting was very appropriate for the subject matter of what I was doing, because it's a very in the moment technique. You've got something that is fluid 1 minute and then literally in seconds it turns into a solid, and it's unpredictable and you don't really know quite what you've made. So it's a bit like a handshake or a moment you have as a connection with somebody else. You're making something but you don't really know what the outcome is yet. And I've used lots of materials to cast, from wax, plaster, chocolate, through to hard materials like porcelain, metal, and glass. I quite liked using glass. So I think probably casting's been the main thing that's been the inspiration behind looking at moments. What I'm going to do first of all is enjoy the moment, and I'm going to graduate, and then after that I'm just going to be ready to make the most of any moments that come, because you finish a course like this and you never really quite know what's going to happen next, and I think you can plan and plan, but actually after you graduate everything just changes. So I think I'll be looking for the opportunities that I've got. I'll be applying for artists and residencies, looking for opportunities to travel, but most of all continue the body of work now that I've found a subject matter that really interests me.
So my name's Ellys and I stayed just outside Glasgow. I'd done the portfolio course at GSA and loved being in the city centre, so thought the kind of natural progression was to apply to do the undergraduate course here. My initial research was looking at the 3 Forth bridges, and I was kind of interested in the contrast between the 3 of them, the different materials that were used. What was interested me was the fact that they're 3 completely different, like going back in time when the rail bridge was obviously constructed, the materials and how that was made is completely different to the new Queensferry crossing. So yeah, I guess the kind of modern aspect of the new bridges compared to the kind of more industrial look of the rail bridge. So I started sampling different textures and forms, taking a lot of images and photos and working from those, sketching different shapes and different kind of combinations, and then working in card using like card samples. So on my samples I used concrete, acrylic, card, wood. I started off looking at the kind of straight lines and the angles that were found in the 3 bridges, and then started joining those together to create different forms that worked together. Then made my card samples and brought them together and pulled aspects from those to then create more final samples that I could do in metal. I focused on scoring and folding. That kind of developed on from the last project in 3rd year, and I really enjoyed doing that, so I wanted to develop my skill in that and focus on that, and obviously the shapes I'd been looking at in the bridges, it just fitted really well. So yeah, scoring and folding to get the kind of angles and straight lines that I'm drawn to, as well as using etching. So etching in layers in different stages to build up a kind of more three-dimensional texture on the quite flat, obviously angular surfaces for the scoring and folding. And again, the contrast of that rough kind of concrete texture compared to the flat kind of clean surfaces that are the forms that I could make with the scoring and folding. So I've made 6 napkin rings, 3 in wire, 3 in sheet. So the basis of my degree shall work is to mimic the larger scale of the bridge structures into smaller functional tableware, and then when their pieces aren't in use they sit well as small decorative sculptures. I obviously enjoyed focusing on scoring and folding, so hopefully just develop that and hopefully progress my technical skills, and then some point in the future hopefully set up my own business and sell my own work.
My name is Justina Kim, and I'm originally from South Korea, and I choose to study Glasgow because I think there's no certain types of art they're looking for, so I feel like I have more freedom to express myself. I was studying in sculpture installation before, and I wanted to do a bit smaller scale in more detail, so I feel like it's more fit me, so I transfer it. The title of my work is Hybrid Identity. The main purpose is to think and search about my one own true identity, and another purpose is to highlight the differentiation from others. And I use a lot of body parts. I cut, distort, and deconstruct the body part. The body part represents my emotional life in my real life, which is reflected in the physical image in my body work. I found myself the most interesting doing wax carving and 3D printing. So I use a lot of 3D program and then 3D printing it in the wax and then casting into the silver. I wanted to do the smaller scale because it got more detail, and then all the final piece is going to link with the chain. I think aesthetically is going to look better if I do the smaller scale. I started with the ZBrush modeling, and I made some maybe 5 or 6 different hands. They are all different, so I 3D printed all things, and then I cut it in the different. I did a collage before, and then I cut it in the different direction, and I'm going to link this into the chain together. I want to take a little break, and I am trying to apply for artist in residence. I haven't decided which city yet, and then I want to study master's degree within 1 or 2 years.
I'm Shona Dobie, and I'm from Glasgow. I chose to study at the Glasgow School of Art because I was at Cardona College on the south side of Glasgow, so I just thought it was like a natural progression to follow on to here. My degree show collection is based upon the natural and urban environments around Glasgow, concentrating on the patterns like naturally formed and also within the construction industry. I'm looking at the repetition of shapes within my work and also like kinetic elements of being able to make it move, with co-connections, which I found a really good way of being able to make things move without it being too sturdy. A lot of my work is really nice and movable. The techniques that I've found best that have worked for me is press forming, of making shapes and making the work more 3D, with enameling, bringing in all the colour that I really wanted to bring into my work with the silver tones and the reds and the oxidisation, and with aluminium, which I've used a lot of my work, is bringing in like another tone of the grey with the silver. I've done a lot of precision drilling, which is making me create my pattern and bring in the circle elements that have created a grid-like pattern. And with using cold connections, I've been able to puck weld it all together, which is almost like a rivet, which is something that I'd like to develop on further. In the future, I'd like to apply for a postgrad course and hopefully go down the teaching route, and hopefully do that part-time so that I'd be able to concentrate on working part-time and also my business part-time.
I'm Rachel Hardie, I'm from Glasgow, and I chose JC because it was pretty close to home and it had a really good reputation in the past, so I wanted to come here. My inspiration comes from the architectural quirks of Glasgow, and I focused on the chimneys when I was walking to work or uni. If you looked up, I seen them all like in a row, looking all different with their shapes and sizes, so I kind of wanted to try and take that into my work. Just when I was looking at them, it was easier for me to kind of get a way to work with the metal, because transferring paper to metals, I didn't want to waste material in that process. So when I made the paper model, I knew exactly what I was doing, and I'd just do loads of cone drawings and make them smaller and bigger, and then kind of assemble them together, and then I knew kind of what the pieces were going to be. I marry precious and non-precious metals together in sheet form and in wire form, not just one or the other, and I also kind of try to bring the wire into the sheet. Sometimes the lines that are on the metal, so it would be, say it was silver and copper, the two halves are taken from my drawings, so the projection lines are where the metal gets cut into two halves. And also the colours, I like when two different metals meet, the colours are different, and it kind of goes back to when I looked at the chimneys, and their colours are just completely different in all of them, because they're quite smoky too and dirty. So none of my pieces are kind of polished, they're all kind of a bit matte and not dull, but oxidised, and yeah, probably matte is a good way to describe it. So this piece is from the Goldsmith's bursary, and it's a combination of 9-carat gold and silver wires stacked and sweat soldered, and then the final surface of it is oxidised and then rubbed back to kind of get the smoky effect from the chimneys, and the shape comes from the chimney sort of shape on top of the building. I like them all together. I think they work well, but they can stand alone when you take them out. Yeah, I quite like, some people say they look like they're having a conversation with each other, which is, I quite like that. I kind of just want to enjoy the Grey Show and enjoy the designers and see what happens. Apply for residencies or get a studio, but right now I just want to enjoy it while it lasts.
My name is Astrid Jaroslawsky. I'm from Germany, and I came to Glasgow because I made an apprenticeship back in Germany, and it was quite traditional based, and because of that I got quite interested in what else jewellery can be, and I wanted to explore a little bit more different techniques, non-traditional techniques, different materials, and I thought GSA would be the right place for that. That's why I came here. My inspirations behind my Grey Show for my pieces is my time spent here in Glasgow. It is very influenced from Glasgow itself, from the buildings, from the movement of sun and the buildings and the sandstone. With that inspiration, the visual inspiration, I aimed to create a body of work which has this kind of sense of space in them. So I wanted that someone who looks at my work maybe can explore the work like a little wander through the city, like a casual wander through the city, with the inside and the outside contrasted in my pieces, and the space should provide in my pieces. It doesn't has an functionality itself, but I'd like to see them filled with meanings and experiences from memories and yeah, things like that. The process is I'm slip casting my objects, and I actually collected sandstone from the city, from stonemason, and crushed the sandstone down into sand again, and then applied that to the surface. So I have got exactly the surface what the buildings have in Glasgow, so it has like this, and it's sandstone from Glasgow, so it has this really tight connection to the space, to the place, and yeah, that's the process. I started first with the actual imprints of Glasgow. So I went out and took rubber stamps pretty much from buildings and tried to work with those textures. But then moved on to actual use the material those textures are made of. Because I was still interested in the textures, the chisels, and the actual textures of the buildings, and I'm still inspired by that. I have some textures on my pieces which are burred out and have leaving some light through, and they're inspired from the traces on the sandstone. So that ties still in, but the main material I have the sandstone, just the sand, and then combined with like stones and yeah, just inside and outside to connect the outside to the inside again, just to keep it going. I just hope to continue making and want to stay in Glasgow and want to stay inspired by Glasgow. That's it.
I'm Roslin Watson, and I'm originally from Melton Mowbray down in Leicestershire, and I came to Glasgow partly because of the city and partly because of the school and the reputation here. Yeah. So my mum studied here back in the 80s, so there's that sort of connection to obviously to GSA, and she did silversmithing as well. So yeah, it seemed to make sense. Yeah. I wouldn't really say there was any specific source of inspiration, or yeah, it's more of a general sort of affiliation with the form or with the object or material as well. The process was interesting to me, so in that sense there isn't, like, explaining the ideas behind it is probably quite tricky, but what I really wanted to do was make work that didn't necessarily rely on a concept or a narrative, and so, you know, the pieces could be valued for what they are rather than what they're supposed to represent. So that's why, you know, I wanted them to be quite simple and tactile and that kind of thing. I think probably if I was to pinpoint something, it would be, you know, the environment I sort of grew up in, my house and things like that is just full of stuff. So I have a sort of I feel like I have a bit of a connection to like just objects in general and like a collection of things. So yeah, it's not necessarily like a specific thing. It's more of a feeling, I suppose. So most of the work for the pieces was done on the lathe. So there's a lot of spun elements, and the wood had to be turned. Generally, other than that, it's just a lot of soldering and filing and finishing and yeah, forming and things like that, to just get the shape, basically. I suppose they're sort of domestic objects, and sort of they have a sort of notional function, but they're not. It's not explicit, I don't think. Although, I mean, it is. They're pots, really. So these are spun. The separate elements are all spun, and yeah, I think they worked out quite well. But that was just basically just getting a variety of shapes and sizes and putting them together. And it was almost the same with the wood that I had. I just thought it'd be quite nice to have the different colours, so it wouldn't just all be like one colour. It would be yeah, there'd be some variety in there. So the wood came sort of as an afterthought. I'd already done a bit of work with black wood, and then looked into other things. So got some pink ivory, yellow heartwood. This is paduk, I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, they're just nice hardwoods and they turn well and come up nicely, and they sort of match the metals. So I'm planning on going back down south, sort of for the near future. Probably looking at. I'd like to do more with woodworking. Maybe look into learning a bit more about that, and yeah, maybe more industrious pieces in the future. But yeah, far along the line, probably look at postgrads and stuff and things. But for the time being, yeah, just maybe holiday and then back to it. Yeah.